And with the presidential election upon us now, what better guide than The Outsider's Guide to US Presidents? Let's kick off with the fact that US presidents can only serve 2 terms, but they used to be able to go a lot longer. James Morrow, tell us why they had to curtail the length of time that a person could be the US president. Was it because they were getting fed up with them, or what was the danger there?
So what happened was, originally what happened was George Washington served for 2 4-year terms. That became the tradition. It became the norm, as people like to say in politics, about what they were allowed to do. And so this became the tradition. You would run for 2. If you won 2, that was it, and you were up and out. Now, this was because, when they started the United States, obviously they wanted to avoid all the things that they had come from in England and Europe, monarchy and all of that sort of thing. So there wanted to be limits on power. So fast forward, 100 or so years, 150 years, and we get to the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who runs for not 1, not 2, but 3 or 4 terms, in the end. So he served 4 terms, died in office in his 4th term, just towards the end of World War II, and was replaced by Harry Truman. Then after that, of course, they had to change the rules, say, no, that was a very special circumstance. We are not doing that again. And so now the limit is 2 terms. Now, of course, this is something that Donald Trump has always loved to play with. Maybe I'll win 2 terms. Maybe I'll run 3. Maybe I'll run 4. You wouldn't believe it. And, of course, everybody starts blowing, oh, my God, the norms. He's breaking the norms. He's going to be president forever. He's a dictator. But, of course, FDR, well, make him the original dictator then.
Rita, if Joe Biden gets in, he'll be the oldest president ever to come into office. There have been some young ones. Obviously, JFK is always touted as the young president. But in fact, it was Theodore Roosevelt who was the youngest president who assumed the presidency after an assassination of William McKinley. How important is age, do you think, Rita, in terms of determining the president of the United States?
Look, I don't think it's a huge factor, certainly not this time around. Both candidates are well into their 70s, so you can't really say one is the youthful candidate, though Trump does seem to have a lot more energy and seems to be with it a bit more than poor old Joe, who has had too many episodes of being confused or just saying bizarre things that people are worried. Is Kamala really going to be president if they win? How much of a role is Joe Biden going to play? But I think youth can be an advantage. I think I don't think it's a discounting element. If you've got a candidate with the right attributes, if they're young, it can work in their favour. I mean, Bill Clinton was relatively young and he had a lot of momentum. Same with Barack Obama. So I don't think age is as an important factor as some say.
The scandals that have plagued some presidents, some seem to stick to them, others don't. We had, obviously, Rita just mentioned Bill Clinton. There was the whole Monica Lewinsky scandal that brought him undone. We've had assassinations that have terminated presidencies. I guess, James, what's your favourite roguish president? Rather than your favourite presidential president, who's the biggest rogue you think that ever sat in the White House?
Rogue. Ooh, that's a good one. Look, there have been a few throughout the years. Bill Clinton was obviously quite a rogue during his time. I wouldn't say he was a favourite of mine, probably just the opposite. And yet it's amazing when you look at these scandals, there's this whole phenomenon of whether or not a president is Teflon or not. And we see this over and over again. If a president is liked, nothing sticks to him. So, all of that stuff with Monica Lewinsky, he skated through that. He, went through 2 terms. Ronald Reagan, he was very popular. And in his 2nd term, they tried to get him with the Iran-Contra scandal. It is now a fascinating thing to me. You want to talk about roguishness. Well, ever since, I think, the Watergate scandal, the relationship of the press and the people and the presidency has fundamentally changed to the point now where it is really the press and the journalists, they want to get the president. They want to make a rogue out of the president and then figure out a way to take him down. So everybody dreams of Watergate scalp as a reporter, preferably a Republican one. But now, this is the way we are now. We've just spent 4 years with Trump, probably as the greatest roguish president ever. They didn't pin anything on him. They went after him, all this stuff that turned out to be nonsense. But I would make an argument that Donald Trump has probably been one of the biggest and most successful roguish presidents in the sort of the more charming, affable sense of the word that you could imagine.
Rita, I guess the cliche about the U.S. presidency is the Abe Lincoln idea that you can be born in the log cabin, come from complete poverty, come from nowhere, rise to the most powerful position, not only in the land, but arguably in the world. Is that actually true of the U.S. presidency?
Well, in theory it is true. As long as you're born in the US, you qualify, but obviously you do need enormous backing. It's a very expensive thing to pursue if you're running for office, even if you're not running for president, if you're running for Congress or Senate or whatever it is office you're running for, you need to have considerable backing to get through. So I guess in that way you could argue that, well, it's not really an open field. But I think Trump shows that you can be a genuine outsider. You can be from outside that DC bubble, outside the swamp, and be a disruptor.
So long as you've got lots of money.
Well, yeah, I was going to say it helps if you're a billionaire and you can pay for it yourself. I mean, this is one of the things people don't understand about Trump. There's so much nonsense out there, so many conspiracy theories that he's using the White House to enrich himself and his family. This guy was a billionaire and he's actually taking a significant financial hit by leaving his businesses aside to work at the White House for free, by the way. He donates his salary to charities. So, how many people would do that? How many billionaires would sacrifice their own personal wealth to have that shot at public office? We saw Bloomberg try it on this year, but who knows? I think it's, again, not particularly healthy because you don't want to limit the candidates to billionaires or those who've got corporate backing, but it is the system that's prevalent at the moment. But you can have anybody get there. You can be a waitress like AOC, with very limited work experience.
I thought you were going to say very limited something else, but anyway, I won't say that because I'd be accused of all sorts.
So you can, but at the end of the day, she's got backing. She's got significant funding behind her to do what she wants to do.
James, in the history of the US presidents, obviously there have been many that have disappointed, that have not risen to the standards that the voters expected of them, and many who's kind of superseded what was expected of them. Often war or unforeseen events play into that idea that this is the president we've got with, let's hope he does something well. To what extent do you reckon Donald Trump and the coronavirus, COVID-19, has his reaction to that disappointed people, or has he been a surprisingly good president? How would you read public expectation of him?
I would put Trump in the middle of the pack of world leaders of major countries in dealing with coronavirus. I think that the U.S. has done a lot better than countries like Italy, Spain, and certainly the U.K., which is just a complete shambles. It hasn't done as well as other countries like Sweden, which saw the writing on the wall early, knew what they had to do, knew what they had to get through, and are now not suffering the horrible second waves that the rest of continental Europe is suffering as we head into winter. So I think on that level he has done I think he's done moderately well. But hang on, Rita, can you imagine what would happen if Trump pursued a herd immunity strategy? Yeah. I mean, well, can you imagine? This is he couldn't do it because the media is the other player. But what I wanted to say though is that a lot of presidents try and use crisis to kind of embiggen themselves. One of the interesting things about Trump is that when you look at his foreign policy, however, this has been the greatest success of his presidency. You know, there have been no new stupid wars. There's been, you know, an extreme lack of the bellicosity we've seen from previous presidents. We have not seen, and we've seen peace in the Middle East, which is something that, you know, these other presidents before him couldn't achieve because he saw that the Palestinians were a dud cause and nobody really actually cared about them in the Arab world, and peace didn't hinge on them. This is a really interesting thing that I think marks him out as a leader, though, is that rather than creating a crisis, setting a fire to then put it out, he has actually just actively put out fires and gotten these things off the books of the United States, which I think is something that I don't think he gets enough credit for.
Some of the presidents have been, most presidents, I would argue, end up kind of being slightly diminished figures. I'm thinking of James Carter, Gerald Ford, who could have been a good president, but he had the whole burden of Watergate and Nixon behind him. That kind of seemed to drown him. He never really found his feet. Often, obviously, the president is going to get the kind of ridicule that comes with holding office and trying to deal with all these world events. How do you think, Rita, history will view the most recent presidents, Obama and Bush, and I guess Clinton before that?
Well, you've got to look at who's writing the history. And we saw with Obama, he faced very little scrutiny from the bulk of the media. They were in the midst of giving him an 8-year tongue bath. I mean, it was just sickening, the way they absolutely idolised and adored him. And they still do. Yeah, I think that's one of the great things in the recent years has been that all these supposedly impartial reporters and news anchors, they're all on social media and they're all airing their biases and their sometimes fringe views for everyone to see. So now you can see who's writing history, and perhaps some get a much softer run than others.
Well, I think we're going to have to pull... We've run out of time. God, we went through that quickly. I know, extraordinary. But I think I can't go past the tongue bath of Barack Obama.
That's the last word on this, I think.
I think that's the last word.